Mini episode 1233 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello everyone, welcome to FDH Lounge, mini episode 1233. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here with part 15 of our Coronavirus Crisis 2020 series, and I think this is probably the fifth one to deal with pro wrestling during these times here. Pro wrestling is a great diversion during these times, and to review the 2020 version, the second version of Double or Nothing from All Elite Wrestling AEW, good friend and fellow FDH Lounge dignitary Jake Digman theorized that we should watch this show and review it, and I appreciate it. I appreciate his generous sentiments in that regard, and I really enjoyed this show. I can't say when is the last time I've enjoyed watching a show this much, but it's been some time. I really did have fun watching it. Jake, what were just sort of your overall thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, Rick, it's a pleasure to be back here. I think I've been on more of the quarantine episodes than I have in the past few years, so it's a lot of fun to have a free schedule to be able to do such things. And as far as AEW Double or Nothing last night, I think AEW proved that you can do a pro wrestling event during the quarantine and actually do it right, make it entertaining. Did a lot of different on the show? No. What did I love the most? Did I have a good time? And did I have a good time? Yes. Did I regret spending my money on it? No. And that's really all you can ask for at the end of the day.
Absolutely. A great show. A lot of entertainment top to bottom. We'll get into it. And I have to say, too, and this is something that I've said to friends of mine when I was urging them to check out not just this, but also the shows that they've been doing there recently. We have, as you alluded to, sort of de facto studio wrestling in these times here. The WWE doing all of their shows out of their performance center in Orlando. And we have here these shows being done out of the Daly's Place Amphitheater in Jacksonville, which is attached to the football stadium, I believe, or adjacent to, whatever that is. More about that later. But I've said to my friends, watch wrestling from there. You won't regret it. Because I remember going back to whatever the show was last summer, I think it was Fyter Fest. First time I saw a show there, and that was one of the crowd, but I just fell in love with the place. I mean, as far as, and the way that they are sort of kayfabing the no crowds being there with the wrestlers being around ringside, generating a bit of noise, that at least helps. But the set is really cool when you get the shots of the light coming in from outside, when there's like the setting sun, basically, generally when they're doing the shows from there. Like, it's one of my favorite places ever to watch wrestling. Do you love it also?
Oh, absolutely. I think I talked before, we discussed this on the MMA show.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of Monaco Pavilion, and I can think that's one of my favorite venues I have ever a part of. And I think it's really cool, like you said, I agree with your sentiment. It's Daly's Place is a very old venue as far as watching pro wrestling, and especially you can see the crowd in the background. And it's not like anything. It's so much better with packed full of fans, but they did a pretty good job of doing it. And you know what? I think there was more people there than they even showed on camera, too. You can see, like, you can hear people in the background, like, reacting to stuff as far as during the show. So it's just interesting to see, like, I mean, how do I get a job as being a social worker as an AEW fan? Sounds like a pretty good gig.
Well, and I have to say, too, and this is one of the things, and WWE is most to blame for it, because, again, they've pretty much dominated wrestling in the 21st century as far as what we see on TV, but there's a sameness to basically every arena, every type feel, and the fact that on the rare occasions they run shows at MSG, they even make MSG look like any other arena. It used to be they'd come out of that dinky side entrance and it'd be sort of a short jaunt to the ramp, and you wouldn't have the Jumbotron. It looked different, and they've basically made even that sort of genericized when they run MSG. The only building they haven't been able to really do that to is whatever they're calling it now. If it's Allstate Arena, whatever it is in the old Rosemont Horizon in Chicago. That one is that's distinctive no matter what they do to it. But Daly's Place, I think that's one of the things that makes it stand out. AEW does a pretty good job with their set design when they're running regular shows to where they make arenas not quite always look like other arenas, but it's a rare thing in this day and age. It's not like it used to be where different arenas would have their own feel. The WWE, unfortunately, has contributed to the generization, whatever you want to call it, of the look of wrestling arenas. Daly's Place really stands out.
I agree with you, and I think that's just like the generalization of all arenas of corporate sponsors now. It used to be like, it was fun. I was watching some stuff on the network and some stuff from the WWE network, and I forget what it was, but something that happened out there, and I could see in the background the Cavaliers logo, and I was like, I was here for this. I don't remember that happening, but I was there for this moment. And you could feel it. Back then, you could watch the push, you could see the different logos of different cities or whatever town they were in. Now, because of the technology and everything that you see, and like you said, every single venue looks exactly the same. One of my other favorite venues in WWE, and I'm going to go old school on this one, is what historically has been falsely named Trump Plaza, maybe 4 or 5, the Atlantic City Boardwalk. That was the first big movie I ever got as a kid, and just the way that whole venue was set up and everything, that's one of my first memories of watching the WWF, is seeing WrestleMania 4 and them walking down the steps and lights and everything coming down, and I was just, maybe it's nostalgia, I always loved that venue because it's such that unique style and feel that, with the exception of really Daly's Place, we don't really get much of that anymore, so it's pretty cool to see. It's pretty cool to see, something a little bit different, and it's convenient that the owner of the company also happens to own a football stadium that has a amphitheater attached to it.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where I've always had a soft spot in my heart in terms of wrestling for things that are different. They got to be done well, but different. So whether it be Ronnie Garvin back in the day, his presentation was different than everybody else's. Shinsuke Nakamura, at least the way it used to be before they ruined him. Becky Lynch as the female Stone Cold. If something is being done and it's fresh and it's different, I like it. And that's how I feel about Daly's Place. And it's a thing where I have to say before we get to this, you and I had talked about this previously, about the year 1992 in WCW, and when we were going through our wrestling streaming recommendations, you had talked about the War Games from 92, so Wrestle War 92, and I told you I've been sort of just playing around, just having a little bit of fun of like rebooking of how things could have been better that year. I'm about halfway through that pay-per-view. I'm just up to the match the next one is gonna be the Steiners. Holy crap, what a bad undercard. Like, no wonder WCW eventually went out of business. Like, it wasn't even as good as their TV. Like, the shows like the main event, they had better matches than the undercard of that thing. And I don't even necessarily mean that the matches were crappy, but the matchups were crappy. Like, it's so funny that I'm in the middle of another show set in Jacksonville from 28 years ago. That one, I haven't gotten to the War Games yet. I'm sure that's going to redeem it. But everything up to this point, and I think I remember the Steiners match being good against the two Japanese guys, but everything at that point was god-awful. Completely the opposite of what we saw last night.
Yeah, I actually don't even remember a scene from the undercard from that show, and from what you're saying, it's probably for the best. So.
Yes, utterly unmemorable, and but I think there will be a lot of things from last night that are going to be memorable in the long haul. We start with the Casino Battle Royale, the ladder match. It was essentially like a ladder match Royal Rumble, where they had the poker chip hanging, and they had, I think it was 9 participants in there, and they would all enter one at a time. And the mystery entrant that there was to be was Brian Cage, and he got in there and did a lot of cool Brian Cage stuff. He's a guy who's going to fit very well into this promotion, because I think they need upper tier guys on the heel side. And looking at it last night, and we'll get to this, but Brody Lee takes the L a little early in his tenure. Lance Archer takes the L a little early in his tenure. It's too soon to push MJF's bodyguard. to that point. You've already got Jake Hager. He's already taken the L to Ambrose. Not Moxley. I brain farted there. So Moxley was needing guys to come in. It's going to be a little bit awkward because he's already beaten Cage, and they might have to pretend that never happened. But Moxley versus Cage should be awesome. I'm a big Brian Cage guy. He fits in well. They put him with Taz. He was doing some Tazplex type stuff. I thought the presentation of it and putting him over, I thought was just spot on.
I thought it was. They did a very good job of focusing on highlighting Brian Cage in this match, and especially giving him enough time to rest when they literally buried him underneath everything.
Yes.
Again, like I said, I'm not going to praise everything. Here's criticize when necessary. I've got to be honest with you, Rick.
Yeah.
I don't like ladder matches anymore. I sit there because it's just a thing. We got into a discussion about them, how they've done everything. That being said, my issue with this match, I wish it would have been open until the last entry came in. Because the guys had to come up with ridiculously dumb ways to not climb the ladder.
Sure.
And that was the only thing that really took me out of it. And I gotta be honest, I don't get Orange Cassidy. I don't understand it. I don't know what the point of that is. I mean, I just don't look, he just doesn't care. So he doesn't care to be there. I don't understand. Maybe a whole tiny on this one. I don't know. That's just once he got his like, oh, I don't know how to use a ladder. What am I supposed to believe in that? I couldn't find one person, but I mean, it's just out of my wheelhouse on that one. Trying to set up the ladder and everything, but overall, as far as debuting a new star with Cage and getting him over, and you mentioned number one to obviously ringing through so far. Well, Brian Cage, the prize for such a successful debut. He's now the number one contender for Firefest, or Raiderfest, or what they're calling it, for John Moxley in the AEW World Championship. And I don't see them taking the belt off of Moxley every time, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, because I think, and the way they were talking last night about MJF being undefeated, I think that is eventually the destination, is Moxley v. MJF. And that maybe when MJF is the champion, that's how they, in the long term, might circumvent the Cody Rhodes stipulation again, because to have Cody beat MJF for the world title would kind of be that big breakthrough moment that they're looking for. Perhaps, I'm just speculating, but MJF, and that's the thing too, I thought initially he was going to be the one getting the title shot here, the Brody Lee thing, and we'll get to that subsequently. That felt like a thing where they kind of retrofitted in here. WWE right now is doing this in a big, big way of not wanting to burn too many important things in the empty arena era, i.e. let's push Bobby Lashley to the main event because there won't be any fans there to crap on it. Let's save any of the quote-unquote money matchups for later. And saving MJF and not going with him on this card here reeks a little bit of the same to me.
I absolutely agree with you. MJF is straight money. He is absolutely straight money. He is the best heel in the business right now, and he's one of the best workers in the business right now because he gets that he doesn't do too much stuff. He's not trying to get all the shit in. He's just out there to tell a story. And I don't know if it's pretty sure it's next. I can imagine Jungle Boy. Absolutely fantastic. Good old-fashioned pro wrestling. That's how I like my pro wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. That was an excellent match. It was the one after this. The one other thing I'd like to say about this match, I gave it 3.5 stars. I was fairly enamored of it. I'm like you. I'm kind of over ladder matches also too, but I felt it was a good presentation as long as they were going to go with the genre. The one thing is, and I don't think you would have popped for this the way I would have. You and I, as much as we look at things alike, we somewhat part company on Orange Cassidy. I'm amused by him. I mean, and it's one of these things where I don't love every comedy character. I didn't love Eugene back in the day, but if it's a comedy character that doesn't make me want to punch glass, I basically kind of like it. You know what I mean? It's like I tend to be very hot or cold on comedy characters, and Orange Cassidy amuses me. I don't know, but the way that he was riding, you know.
He's a slacker, doesn't care. You can relate to him, Howard.
Well, I'm I'm not sure what the psychology would be, but when he was riding Cage's back up the ladder, Cage was carrying him up the ladder there.
That was pretty good.
I mean, dude, if Orange Cassidy would have reached above him, got the chip, won the match, I mean, that would have been bad booking. But I would have popped like an MFer, and I would have been saying to myself, I can't wait to hear Cornette's next rant on this one.
It's funny. So when he was doing that, when that whole spot was going down, my exact, I actually said this out loud. I'm like, this company's not dumb enough to give that in the pockets, are they? Oh crap, they are that dumb.
I mean, it would have been
you know what, though?
bad booking, but in the moment, great.
Watching wrestling fun, but isn't that what makes it fun, though?
Yeah.
You don't want it to happen. Because, I mean, like, for example, I'll do a reverse on this. With Brock Lesnar last year won Money in the Bank, I popped hard. So many people hated it.
Sure.
I loved it. So, you know, I'm sure if that would have been the finish, so many people would have loved it. I would have hated it. I would have been like, well, that's dumb.
Right. And there's...
But I just don't... There's something with these that I don't understand. This was the second one of these they've done.
Uh-huh.
And my only issue I have with them is they had the one where someone got the title shot, I believe.
Yeah.
And they had the women's one. But like even like the first one they did when someone was in the title match, and this one per se too. This one was a little bit better. It seems like there's all these undercard guys in the match, and then they throw in one big name guy.
Right.
But two, and you're like, well, I wonder who's gonna win this now. You know?
Right.
Because the only thing is that but this one had a little bit more name talent, but I just couldn't see hardly anybody walking out of there with that thing. I could maybe, besides Cage, maybe Luchasaurus, but they weren't ready to pull the sword on something like that. And if he would have won, it would have been a one-off on a Dynamite episode or something. Then he would have got the title shot. The fact that Moxley was the champion kind of led credence that it was going to be a heel that was going to win. Unless they went with Darby to do the whole like underdog kind of like a la Bret Hart versus 1, 2, 3 Kid from Raw many years
Right.
ago. But no, they went with the same approach and an old Brian the Path. Who is ready for the Path of Cage?
Exactly.
When you first heard that music, did you pop and think it was Taz?
Yeah. I thought it was pretty, outstanding there as far as the reference goes with the way that they were doing it. And that's one of those things where, again, they are very, very, very strong on the main event and semi-main event face side. Heel side, a little bit thinner, and when you've got a face world champion in Moxley, and now Cody, spoiler alert, as the TNT champion, you got to beef up that side a little bit more. You don't really have any big-time faces that are ripe for a turn right now. They seem to be looking that way early on with Hangman Page, but he got so over in his role, like there's no way they could turn him heel. I mean, this is like, you know what the funny thing is? I mean, having like Jericho in the promotion, it's almost reminiscent like, what if Jericho in '98, when he was doing he was doing the heel stuff, but guys like me and you, I mean, I didn't know you at the time, but I'm guessing you thought it was as cool as I was, the stuff he was doing, and inventive, and the list, 1,004 holds. Like, if the crowd would have just refused to let him be a heel. Like, that's kind of what happened with Hangman Page. They were looking to go in that direction with him, but the crowd was just like, no, we're not having it.
No, yeah, I agree with that. It's funny you brought up Benji Jericho. You just got me thinking for a second. When I was in high school, a bunch of dudes in my high school all ordered the WCW Monday Jericho shirts. Right? And then they all came in, and I was like, I didn't know you guys are doing that. We go, oh, you would want some. I'm like, I hate all of you right now. That was pretty comical. I'm like, I'm one biggest wrestling fan out of all of you. Yes, I am. So it was pretty comical, but yeah, this as far as I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Refresh me back there.
Hangman Page. Hangman
Page.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hangman Page, I agree. He has come back into at first he was kind of lukewarm, and then all of a sudden he decides he wants to drink, and I'm sure we'll talk about that during the Station 2 match. But, yeah, he got put over by not doing anything.
Right.
And I don't say that in a bad way. Some parts of his character come out and whatnot. I mean, he's the best one of that whole group, in my opinion.
By the way, speaking of getting over by not doing anything, I'm going to make another old WCW reference to 96, 97 Sting. There was a rumor, because his deal with WWE might be up, maybe Sting in the rafters last night. I didn't want to see anybody in the rafters on a May 23rd pay-per-view, especially the week of the Owen Hart Vice documentary. I'm so glad they didn't go in that direction, even if they signed him.
Yeah, I thought about that for a second, and then I kind of was like, oh yeah, it's the day that Owen Hart, passed away, 21 years ago. And then it kind of dawned on me, oh my God, Owen Hart's tragic death is open to drinking. I feel old. But anyways,
Yeah.
I agree with you on that one. And, honestly, I mean, it's on this discussion of Sting, and I think there's a role for him to play, and I think AEW could use him a lot better than the WWE did, i.e. do anything with him.
Right.
But, I mean, I can see Sting as, did you catch that they made a reference to him on the show?
Right.
The commentators did specifically reference, because when Cody pulled up the Stinger Slash, they made a reference, they didn't add, but they made a reference, they said how Cody Sting was Cody's childhood idol, or something like that, and now they're really good friends. I was like,
right.
Oh, well, that's neat. Thanks for that being drunk out of nowhere.
Yeah, very, very interesting in that way, and they might be doing it, but I wanted to, I'm glad that we could mention that as well, because I just wanted to get to it in terms of Cage winning the match, the overall sort of fit and feel of the promotion and how he fits into it right now, because I think that they're very good with having everybody in their roles. The one thing I will comment on is you had a lot of tag guys in this match, and interestingly enough, on the entire show, not one tag team match, largely because the tag team champions were in the Stadium Stampede match, as were the Young Bucks, as were Proud and Powerful. So you had a couple of...
You didn't watch the buy-in show. There was a tag team match on the buy-in show.
Okay, I missed that then. Okay. Well, so how'd that one go?
He didn't miss anything.
Okay.
The best friend that needed the private party to become the number one contenders.
Okay.
They give Corny some more to rant about how terrible Chuck is.
Well, I'm a big mark for the best friends, if only because my best friend and I got those T-shirts and we wore them for our first half bowling championship last year. Spoiler alert, we did not win the championship, but it was still outstanding seeing the two of us wearing those things, Jake. You had to be there.
So you're like the real best friends.
We are. I'm not sure.
Win the championship.
But between Mr. Ruslanich and myself, I don't know which one of us is Chuck Taylor and which one of us
I'll let you be Trent.
is Trent. Yeah. I don't know which of us is which, and my best friend cares nothing for wrestling, so it's not like he would know. So, yeah. I was joking about this, about how I finally got him to wear a pro wrestling T-shirt.
Oh, that's funny. I can see if they tell like, hey, you're Chuck Taylor. You feeling the shoes?
I think he would think that. Yes, that would be where he would go. But I thought 3.5 stars on the match. I thought 3.5 on the next one, which we've already talked about a bit. MJF and Jungle Boy, and JR bringing up in the commentary at the beginning. They seem to be doing this a little bit in here and there, trying to fill in case there were people buying the show that still might not be as familiar with the product. So talking about Jungle Boy's father being Luke Perry, kind of filling in on his background pretty well. This was a match where I thought it was really, really good. One of the things about AEW, and I do think that the records, putting the records on them, the one-loss records, I think it makes it all the more clear where they're going with some of these matches. So there's another match later on, or maybe two, where you could kind of tell, who's going over clearly from what the plans for them are. And I've already talked about what had been somewhat of a dearth of main event heels here, especially coming out of this show where you've just beaten two main event or semi-main event heels. So MJF had to win this match. It didn't have that much in the way of drama. The only thing that I didn't like about this match was they did the Liger bomb that with Jack Perry that MJF ended up kicking out of after he had taken that humongous bump to the floor. And this is one of these things where if you're going to be playing a chicken shit heel, I don't know that you have him kicking out of something like that. And JR was forced to kind of put him over for his toughness. Like, that's not who MJF is character-wise. So I would have done without that. But I thought it was an excellent match. MJF wins in a way that comes off as not exactly cheap, but in a way where it still kind of protects Jack Perry. I thought it was well done all in all, I would say.
I agree with you. I heard every assessment that you actually those good matches were my thoughts. I thoroughly enjoyed the finish. He came across as a slimy heel, but at the same time, still wins. He protected Jack Perry. And while we're at it, did they just call him Jack Perry? Did they just call him Jungle Jack Perry? I don't understand the whole Jungle thing. And again, that's just, but if you have somebody that has actual real name value, and people know who he is and hide the facts, go with it. Just because you did some gimmick on the indies in front of 500 people, you don't have to keep it. So that's just kind of my thought on that. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy him and Luchasaurus as a team. I can't believe anything Marcus Stuckman does. That's just not on 20 rings. It's just, dude, come on, he's so tiny.
Yeah.
He's going to be like, he's going to be like their El Torito, then fine, I'll buy into that. But,
Right.
other than that, but it's like, he's like, Jungle Boy really is the star of that little trio right there. And he's how old is he? 21, 22? He's not that old.
Yeah.
He's young as well, so he's got a pretty bright future ahead of him. And it would be pretty cool, and I know that he did, I know they just introduced another title on this very show, but I mean, I don't know, maybe down the road if they could do some kind of light heavyweight or a welterweight title. I would love to see a versatile welterweight title reign, but then the problem is that you just get bogged down with too much of the too many belts. And the other thing is, I'm pretty sure that half the roster is either super heavyweight or welterweight. So
Right.
it'd be interesting to see, who would qualify for something like that. But it's MJF picking up the win, moving on up. I think we're both in agreement that he should be the one in line for Moxley to a slow build to get the title opportunity of Moxley, and then where they go with Jack Perry from here. It'll be interesting to see, if it's back into the singles or if they bump it up and keep the Jurassic Express tag team going and get some kind of momentum behind them there. Just wait to be seen, but all in all, it was a thoroughly entertaining match. It was the exact finish that I wanted, and I would say it was the right finish. I was happy with it.
Right. Yeah, and the right guy went over, and not least of which, again, because Jungle Boy is, as you said, at this point, primarily a tag team wrestler, which is another kind of giveaway as to who is going over. This is one of these things where I do think this is a thing where my sense, even when he was on the indies, is that he was trying to make his own way, not make it look like he's riding on his dad's coattails, and I'm just extrapolating. I haven't heard anything, but there might be a little bit more sensitivity to it on his part, especially with the tragic, untimely demise of his dad last year, of, not try to make it look like you're riding his coattails. So it's a fine line to acknowledge it, but not have it be, Luke Perry's son at every turn. That's a fine line. I don't know how you tastefully walk that middle ground. I think they've done it pretty well so far. Whether they could go a little bit further with it in terms of pushing him, you may very well have a point there, though.
Yeah, I mean, again, the whole idea is to draw in new audience. And people out there, my girlfriend, she took pictures of him as he came out for one of his entrances, and took pictures of Luke at the same age as Dylan McKay, and they're identical to each other.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty dreamy. So it actually got to the point where it's I'm not one of those people, and I'm if I was going to repackage him, I would just call him Dylan McKay.
Yeah.
You're all right, we're going to give you a fake name. Your fake name is Dylan McKay. And that's who you are. And be all right. And Dylan McKay's not a real person, so,
Well,
I don't know, probably not the best of ideas, but I think as, they gain momentum and they gain more nature recognition, it's one of those things, for nothing else, it's Jim Ross's personal mission is to become a Jungle Boy, because he says Jack Perry every chance he gets.
right.
And then you hear Excalibur getting really, really annoyed about it, it's Jungle Boy.
Right. Yeah, Excalibur is the one who's trying to stay on the page. JR, I think, is at the point where he's pretty much, I think, going to do what he wants on some of this stuff. And I'll tell you what, though, I'll make a prediction, because I actually made a prediction on the last mini-episode when Ben Shu and I were analyzing the landscape with streaming services right now, HBO Max coming into play. I made the clip and save prediction that you may see some of the AEW pay-per-views and maybe even their shows, the archived ones from TNT, ending up on HBO Max. That I think that could be something that happens because it'll take a couple of years until they could build up enough of a library to get their own streaming service. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. And I will say this, in terms of HBO Max, Warner Media, they are a monster media conglomerate. Much like how WWE guys have had crossover opportunities, if any of these guys, I've never heard that Jack Perry's interested in it or whatever, but if any of the guys on this roster might ever have any opportunities from Hollywood vis-a-vis Warner Media, you have to think he'd be top of the list.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Him or, like, of course, the Moxley and the other guys, Jericho, the other guys that already have, name recognition, some sort of name value.
Yes.
But, yeah, you would think that's, something that even of interest in him, too, so.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I can see that. Oh, man, I would totally watch the Adventures of Jurassic Express, whatever they're doing.
I didn't mean that exactly, but I'd be wanting to watch that. That'd be pretty awesome. That would be.
Yeah, they just have a sitcom. You should see like Luchasaurus trying to go to the grocery store. It's like I've been wearing the mask before it was cool.
Go with what you know. It could be like Hulk Hogan rock and wrestling cartoons, right? Just go with what you know.
No,
So
nothing will ever be that glorious.
probably not, but the Adventures of the Luchasaurus Express might be a close second. But yeah. Jungle Boy, Jack Perry, whatever you want to call him, he's got a bright future. MJF has a very bright present, and it's only getting brighter as we go along here. One of his big nemeses, storyline-wise, up in the next match, early in the card, which to me was interesting because there were some people that were thinking this could either be in the main event or semi-main event slot for the new TNT Championship, creatively named. Instead of just calling it the National Heavyweight title, the North American title, the whatever, going with TNT. Yeah, exactly. It's essentially a television title since it's the TNT title, but ironically, first defended off TNT, albeit on Bleacher Report Live, so I guess that's close enough, right? That's a TNT affiliated property, adjacent property. Cody and Lance Archer in the spot here, and you had a whole ton of storyline sprinklings here with Arn Anderson, with Jake the Snake Roberts, Mike Tyson there to present the belt, Brandy Rhodes, who ended up not being at ringside for the match. They told a good and interesting story. It was a high-impact match. I got the sense that for as much offense as Lance Archer was getting in, that might be something of a telltale sign as to the finish, because I figured that if Cody was not going over, that he'd be protected a little bit better. And it was a situation where I gave it 3.25 stars. I thought it was a good match, really solid. Interesting finish that Tyson, Arn Anderson, and Jake Roberts factored in to some degree, but it was still a relatively clean win for Cody in the end. There are people that took issue with the booking. I've seen a lot of what I would call smart marks from the IWC pronouncing Cody as Jeff Jarrett version 2.0, but I would point back to the fact that he jobbed to Jericho and he jobbed to MJF. I mean, he has put guys over who needed to be put over previously. He's got to start getting wins back at some point. It's always awkward when a guy like Archer has to do the job this close into joining the promotion, but he at least made it to the tournament finals. I thought it was a good match. I thought it was the right finish. The right guy went over. What were your thoughts, Jake?
I agree with you that it was the right finish and the right guy went over because at some point Cody does have to win something.
Yes.
And it kind of reminded me of, and I think I saw a picture of one of the AEW groups. It was a picture of Cody holding the TNT title and Dusty holding the television title. And it was kind of like that. It's like, we know Dusty Rhodes as the booker. Sure, he was involved in a lot of stuff, but in the main event team, but he was never the world champion. And if he was, it wasn't very long.
Right.
It was always on there like he was the former world heavyweight champion, and it was chasing him, but he was never the world champion. He was always the television champion or the national champion or something else. That was the belt that was kind of like for people to chase. And I think to make a comparison, if they do this right, this could be, the TNT title with Cody could be the equivalent of like that or Rob Van Dam as the TNT champion in ECW, where it was almost on the same par as the world title because people just wanted to see who was going to be the one to knock him down. Now that all depends guy went over. They need to stop doing the whole Lance Archer throws some guy out on the way to the ring. Because at this point, they've done it every single week. And you think everybody would be smart enough just to get out of the way at this point?
Right.
If for nothing else. Then, like, I thought they were going to do a thing where he threw the guy at Tyson, and Tyson just, like, didn't back down.
Uh-huh.
But they didn't do that. Instead, they showed Mike Tyson, you know, they're like, oh, wow, that's freaky. And how about the moment in the match where they cut to Tyson and he's yawning?
That was kind of funny.
I was like, oh man, someone's in the truck messed up on that one. But I mean, Tyson did great in his role. Tyson's coming back for AEW Dynamite this Wednesday on TNT, so he must have liked it somewhat if he's coming back.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting proposition. What about the thought of Mike Tyson doing pro wrestling for AEW? Whoa.
That would definitely get eyeballs on the product, and it may or may not be a coincidence right now. You never know what to believe with pro wrestling as far as where they're going. But Chris Jericho is already calling him out on Twitter and referencing back to, I guess there was a Raw back in 2010 where Tyson did something to him. I guess this was during the era of Jericho teaming up with Big Show. I vaguely remember Tyson being a guest host. So.
Yeah, he rejoined DX that night.
Oh, okay.
Tyson rejoined DX that night. I don't know if he actually did that night. He may have. But,
okay.
Yeah, he punched and knocked out Jericho. I remember that happening. And, yeah, that was right around during that whole Raw guest host era. But,
okay.
I mean, what does it say about, like, the state of, like, WWE? And I brought this up to, I said this to my girlfriend the other night. I was like, you know, the last night, I was like, it's kind of an interesting thing that, the thing that I thought was weird is how the AEW did not promote at all that Mike Tyson was going to be here. It was just like a little blip on like the screen on like Wednesday. Like, oh yeah, Mike Tyson's going to present the title of the winner on like the same Mike Tyson that was responsible for trading Stone Cold Steve Austin and Premier of the Futures of WWE to win it today. That Mike Tyson, the same Mike Tyson who's who's right now in the public eye because he's training for a comeback and everybody's watching him.
Right.
And everyone's starved for content. And that Mike Tyson.
Right.
And you just put him up in like a blip, and you're just like, hey, he's going to be there. To the point where I didn't even know he was actually going to be on the show. It's like, you know, it was one of those that maybe the deal fell through because it was supposed to be in Vegas, and they weren't in Vegas, but no, there he was. And he came out third from the top, which I also thought was really strange. Like you said, that there he came out. And it looked like he was having a damn good time, and I know a lot of people kind of crapped on the belt, but when he walked out with it, it reminded me of an old boxing belt. Just because it wasn't finished, it had like this silver to it instead of all the gold. Kind of like, you know, boxing is kind of not as, I don't know what's the right word here. So over the top as their belts is wrestling sometimes.
Right.
That's what it reminded me of. It just reminded me of a boxing. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Well, yeah, and Shivani, I think, made a point of referencing that the belt actually wasn't done yet because of the coronavirus lockdown, and there was an unfinished product, so they did reference that in that way. And it was a thing where, I agree with you, they should have made a bigger deal out of Tyson being there. In retrospect, because I didn't see this coming in, but I should have, Tyson being there in that spot was a tell as to who was going over. They always have the celebrity give the rub to the face, whether it's Steve Austin, whether it's the year after that. Remember that it was in the three-way at SummerSlam in '99, it was Mankind that went over Triple H and Austin, lost it the next night to Triple H, but they had Jesse Ventura raising up Mankind's arm, so it's always the babyface that gets the rub in these situations here. Plus, I'm going to go a little bit further down the conspiratorial rat hole that if you're in the TNT network, and I'm not saying that they have direct input on the booking or anything like that, but this is a partnership and this reflects on them. The first TNT champion, I think that they would prefer it to be somebody who it has some name value as opposed to, not to be insulting, but a guy named the Murder Hawk that they just brought in 2 months ago. They've done a great job with Lance Archer, but he is not really known to the mainstream yet. In a way that Cody is. I'm not saying Cody's a mainstream figure like Austin or The Rock, but on the continuum, Cody is one of the more closer to the mainstream figures, I think you would say, out of this entire group yet. So I think that might have been a factor as well. Subsequent TNT champions, it may not be as important, but the first one, the network would probably appreciate having it be one of the more known guys.
I absolutely agree with everything you just said, and to circle back, my point of bringing up, kind of the similar relationship that Dusty had with the TBS executives.
Yes.
When he was, the world television champion. Put the belt on the guy that, said, well, you always going to put the belt on, the booker on that one.
Yeah.
And it's a nice little story that keeps things coming. And it adds some prestige to the title, too. Because, I mean, the name Rhodes, which ironically he doesn't use.
Right.
The name Rhodes is, like you said, and it throws around a lot more weight than the Burger Hawk monster.
Yeah.
After the TNT Network executive meeting, here's our champion at the Burger Hawk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Lance Archer's never going to hold that title, but the odds might be better on the world title, which would actually be better for him if that were the case. But yeah, he'll be built further along. I don't think that this match is going to kneecap him that badly, and I think they will. They're going to be feeding a lot of guys to him, I think, to rehab him after this, no question.